All right, happy Saturday, everybody. Wall Street Jesus here. Welcome to another Saturday Sweep Series. We'll talk some market today. Yes, the screen should show the website pricing page and now charts. We had this issue the last time where it was frozen, but I've been switching them off. All right, good. So everything's good there. Um, we are in earnings season here, so we'll talk mostly about that as far as the markets are concerned. The prior 2 weeks we were discussing game plan wise, what's the best approach to have going into earnings season. We spoke a little bit about how Flo was telling us there was enough momentum, enough strength, uh, showing us that there's most likely going to be a pretty solid run up, especially in tech, into numbers. Okay, we've been seeing that. All right. Obviously, a lot of traders out there, the greed comes in and becomes a big factor. I should have hold through earnings. Netflix, my 10 grand could have been 30 grand, blah, blah, blah. And they're only going to look at the winners off earnings and not the losers. But again, to go back, the game plan coming in, based on flow and just based off what we were seeing, sentiment, we were coming out of some really bearish sentiment in tech. That pretty much has gotten completely washed out. But it was showing a strong possibility that there'll be a nice run up, and we're seeing that. And I still think in specific names, the Babas on the screen, that's one name in particular. We could see that further growing. There will be the 1 day, intraday, or maybe even a couple day washes where if you buy the highs, you're going to get washed out, and if you're trying to use any sort of stop loss, it's going to be difficult. But most likely, we're probably going to see some sort of grind into the BABA number. Maybe the JDs of the world out there. The majority of stuff that have been strong, both price wise and flow wise. Okay. And, like I said, we've been seeing that across the board. Three big names in particular. I got these Thinker swim charts on here today. I forgot to put the other one in, but no big deal. This is the Facebook, same exact thing. You got this nice little move, and then you go into the number. You got a gap up there. Amazon. I don't know how Fibonacci's got on here. I don't even use that, but Amazon, you had that run up into the number, and then they sold off on the number. So again, earnings are a complete crapshoot. Like you heard me mention it. I can give every single one of you guys the exact number a name is going to report, and you still probably won't get the direction as far as the reaction off those numbers, even if you know the number prehand. So it just shows you how much of a crapshoot earnings can be. You have so many things, guidance, that you got to factor in the move into the number. Was there a big move into the number? Maybe you're already factored in and they use it as an excuse to take some profit. There's so many different things. Okay, but when you're coming out of extreme bearish sentiment in tech like we were, and you have such an aggressive nature in flow, that aggressive buying coming in, there's a high probability that you're going to get this. Okay, and we spoke about trying to utilize this. And if you do get this, if you want to hold through the number, leave a runner, right? Leave a small portion of the position. Play with the house's money, risk their money for a change. And if it clicks, obviously you're not going to make as much money as if you held the full position, obviously. But at the same time, you won't give back profits if the opposite happens. Okay, and again, you're still going to make some money if they continue higher. So that's the approach, especially in options. That's the approach we've been talking about a lot in the steam room. And Alvin mentioned the tech run was too short, too quick, and it has been. It goes by. One thing I realize in this market now more than ever throughout my career, everything is so fast. Everything. As soon as there's some sort of news out there, significant news that all of us can see, okay, and think about in the marketplace, the market's going to factor that in like this immediately. Okay, we spoke about that in prior webinars. You remember the Trump election, right? How quick did this market try to factor in the so-called Trump trade? Nothing even to this day has materialized out of that Trump trade. Yet the market wanted to factor it all in before anything took place. Okay, and that's what the market always has done that. You know, you hear the old saying, it's already factored in. The market, any piece of news item that you and I can see with our eyeballs, okay, the market's going to factor that in. But now more than ever, it is so damn quick. All right, and that's going to be I think, in my opinion, on the flip side as well. Okay, when things fall apart to the downside, it's going to happen a lot quicker than we're accustomed to seeing. We saw that in tech, actually. Okay, you see, when these things top out and basically the profit takers come in, they're all going out the exit in one shot. You're going to get this, you know. You're going to get this, and it's going to be so hard unless you're in front of the screen waiting for it to say, oh, I'm just going to stop myself out and try to avoid this. It's going to be really difficult from this point, I think. So what we've been talking about in the steam room of late is basically to take a more conservative approach now. You know, now that we got pretty much what we were expecting, what flow was the tell out of flow. In other words, flow, again, the aggressive buying was telling us there was going to be a lot of momentum over the short term, and we could look to take advantage of this. Now I think you become a little more conservative, and basically you're not trying to get hurt and you're not trying to get rich at the same time, okay? You're looking to take advantage of some things that might still be left out of this rally, okay? But at the same time, you do not want to get caught up here, okay? And that's, I think, the outlook to have now is to focus more on what you have at risk than how to fully take advantage of the opportunity, okay? Where, again, out of this little correction, pullback, whatever you want to label it, when bearish sentiment gets to an extreme and then you have flow get aggressive, you know, this is where you really want to step on the gas, right? This is where you want to be most aggressive. And then as the rally, you know, gets longer in the tooth, now you want to start focusing more on risk than anything else. Okay, so like I said, even like the BABA, which I think can still grind in a sense into their number at the same time, you know, and some numbers are in August, so you got some time there. It's not going to be as smooth, in my opinion. You're going to get those washes. We saw BABA, if you remember, BABA on Thursday, we saw a ton of flow in the morning. I mean, a ton of action come in. The stock was up like $1 and change, ended up $4 and change, and then reversed in the same day. And then on Friday, you know, rebounded again. So that's what I'm thinking we're going to see out of a lot of these names. There's still going to be that demand for the run up into numbers, but it's just going to be more of a choppy grind, and meaning I think you look to take advantage of those washes if you still want to play these things. All right, so if you see a wash in BABA, an intraday wash, where selling really starts to accelerate, and most people are thinking the rally's over, if you're looking for a trade there, that would be the time. Not while BABA's up 4 and everyone's giddy. But again, you're talking about a different a completely different outlook here. You really are. You know, it's not where you look to buy on weakness, accumulate on weakness. Here, like I said, you're more focused on risk, what you have at risk, and you're looking for that short-term trade until we get through earnings. Okay, then, like you always hear me say, I'm a big flow and sentiment guy, right? That's all I look at. I don't really look at anything else, technicals, fundamentals, or anything else. I think post-earnings, the post-earnings flow is going to tell us a lot, like it always has. Last quarter, if you remember, there was some buying in like the Visas of the world. Not even this quarter. I'm talking about when we started the Saturday Sweep Series webinar. So back here, we saw a lot of accumulation in Visa pre that number. Okay, what happened was post earnings, they came back and continued to be aggressive, and that's a bullish sign. Okay, so like I said, post earnings, we're going to get a lot more answers, a lot more guidance at a flow than what we're getting now. To be quite honest with you, and I know a lot of members, private Twitter members, who maybe don't have the luxury to the commentary throughout the day and so forth. A lot of you are wondering what's been going on with flow. It's been very, very sloppy, and that's normal. You know, if you guys were around initially when we started this webinar series, that was the quarter prior, I was talking about the same thing. You know, earnings flow it's the worst. Very rarely is it clean. You got a lot of hedging going on, you got a lot of protection going on, you got a lot of stock replacement going on, which in my opinion is the worst of it, because you see these big orders coming in, and in reality they're not real. You know, they're not that bullish, I should say. You see this $2 million block in, like, I don't know, Microsoft per se, going into earnings, but at the same time, that individual who bought $2 million worth of calls is selling a block of stock and replacing that equity block with calls. You know, some look at that strategy as bullish still. In my opinion, it's not. You know, because the way I look at flow, I'm not looking at every call buyer that buys calls in the market. If you know what I'm talking about, I'm looking for the most aggressive type of buying out there. Okay, that's what I want. When you hear me label an order sharp, right? You hear me say, wow, that was a sharp sweep. Sharp meaning it was clean cut. There's not a doubt in my mind, okay, that player who swept those calls is extremely bullish. That's what I label sharp. And earnings season is anything but sharp, especially when you get closer to that earnings date. So aside from the quick trade, you focus on the names that catch that continuous buying, okay? And I'm being honest, even those names are more prone to failure during earnings season. It's just a fact, okay? I'll give you an example of a couple of them. Here's one. All right, this GIII, GIII is a retail name. Has had incredible flow this past week. All right, and what I mean by that in simple English, you had a sweeper come in, open up the largest position of open interest. He swept 1,000, what were they, September calls, okay, which is a big deal for this name. It doesn't really catch sweeper activity. The following, I think a couple days later, he swept another 1,000. All right, so he opened the largest position of open interest on the first day with 1,000. Now he sweeps another 1,000, so he's got 2,000 of them. Okay, so he adds to the largest position of open interest. And then on Friday, he comes back and sweeps another 1,000. Now, if you didn't have earnings coming in this name, in other words, if this was post-earnings, this, in my opinion, would be the strongest play out of the flow we're seeing. Why? Because whatever syndicate that's buying this or whatever play that's buying this keeps coming back for more. All right, he's showing aggressive emotion here, right? He can't get enough of it. He really wants to own this thing. That's the type of stuff that I try to stress to members you want to focus on. Now, the only issue with this particular name right at this time is there's earnings in, is it August or September? It catches earnings. So it takes away from the bullish tint of this order flow. Like I said, if it was post earnings, you would hear me screaming about this name. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still worth a play, okay? Because again, we saw it, if you remember, the prior quarter. Names like Visa, JD, I mean, they were really, really aggressive, but we saw it there. They caught earnings, all right, the same way, and, you know, was worth a play, in my opinion. But I'm just giving an example of the difference between, you know, pre-earnings and post-earnings. If this was done post-earnings, this is exactly the epitome of what type of order flow you want to see in a name for a high probability setup in these things or flow. All right, so that's what I've been stressing to members. You want to focus on these type of names, okay, as far as swinging positions. So in other words, you would get involved in this thing and try to take advantage of the run-up. Hopefully that you're fortunate enough to get a run-up pre-number, and then maybe you want to leave a little piece, you know, into the number. But again, if there's minimal reaction where the stock comes in a bit off earnings and they come back and hit it again, it's even that much more of a stronger bullish signal. All right, so we see it in names like this. Another name, again, in my opinion, is probably a play on earnings, is Splunk. And let me show you here what they've been doing. I'll go to the Splunk. They're hitting up at higher levels, and here's what I mean by that. Let me see. Let me move this out of the way. Okay, so you can see Splunk here on the right? They started hitting this thing right here. Here was the first day in July, okay? They came in, they bought September 57.5 calls, $327,000 bet, pretty significant bet for that name, okay? That's in early July, 7-7. The stock was under 57 at that time, 56.83 exactly, all right? And then you can see here, the next time they came after it was on 7/20. Okay, the initial bet was July 7th. So now on July 20th, they start, you know, sweeping and coming after September 70s now. So these are way out of the money, 8, 9 points out of the money. And they're doing it up almost basically at 62. The stock is 56 and change, so 5 points higher. They're sweeping September calls again. All right, so they're coming in and paying up now. And you got to understand, this is 5 points higher than where the initial bet came in. So it's kind of chasing in a sense. All right, so you would be looking to get in on pullbacks, and you can see they here again, 61.13. So this came back off the highs of 61.70, 60, 61.80, back in the low 61.13, and they swept it again. And then yesterday, August, when the stock was a little over 60, caught another small sweep. All right, so it's still higher than the initial buying took place at roughly 57, but you can see how they keep coming after this name. All right. They have earnings in September, and to be honest, a lot of this flow looks like earnings flow here. I mean, 8 points out of the money, I'm not a big fan of that shit. Excuse my French. I'm not. You know, it's more of that speculative type of buying. But again, they keep coming after it. So this is a name basically you will look to try to take advantage of on pullbacks. Like you got to pull back on this day in particular. Okay, so if you were interested, you try to take advantage of that, and then play a possible move or push higher into the number. Okay, because again, the initial level is gone there. If you bought the initial level, you know, you probably took some profit and leaving a piece, playing the rest of the run up here. But if you're looking at it now, if you didn't get in on the initial buying, that's how I would look at it. A pullback, any red day where there's some selling like this, that would be your entry, and you're looking to play the run up into numbers. All right, so that's some of the stronger order flow. But again, it's tied to earnings. And as we get through some of these names with earnings, and we are, right? Some of the big names already are through. We're going to start to see some post-earnings flow and the flow really start to clean up. I'll give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about, who's not a member. You can see there's green, a decent amount of green on the board, but there are periods where you'll see put buying. Let me go back if I could go to Thursday. And flow really becomes messy. Hold on. You can see here, see? And it's really not any depiction on the market or anything like that. It's just all these names are reporting. So there's a lot more protection, hedging going on. It's totally normal. Happens every earnings season. And it really makes it tough to get a gauge on the overall flow. You know, a lot of times we use this board as a great sentiment reading. In other words, if the market's selling and there's nothing but green on the board, that divergence is a strong signal for us. But during earnings season, it takes a lot of weight out of that for us. It takes a lot of weight off that signal. So it is what it is. We got to deal with it. You know, it's earnings season, and that's it. Some of the bigger names, you know, I mentioned, like BABA has been ridiculous. You know, the flow there has been incredible. I already mentioned I would look, if you're looking to trade this name, I would look for selling, and then if there's flow into that selling, a possible quick trade out of that. Otherwise, you know, you got this lift already. You cannot think for a second you have the same risk reward as down here when the initial buying came out of this little consolidation off that correction. JD, same thing, ton of action there, ton. You know, and you heard me mention the JD before in the last quarter, which was right here, I think. Okay, so this consolidation here, this little sideways action, they were tattooing this thing literally every day. Got a nice run up pre-number. Okay, you could have took off some risk, left a runner, reported, had another push higher. Okay, then we got this. We got this little pullback here, and they bought the living daylights out of that pullback. You got this run up, and you got this pullback recently. They bought out of this pullback right over here. Flow really got hot. So now up here, you know, it's a different animal up here now. The same way it was a different animal up here, the same way it was a different animal up here. You know, your risk reward is nowhere near as favorable as when there's some consolidation and you see the buying heat up. All right, and a lot of names, a lot of the hot names look like this. You know, what else? I know you guys are interested in the bigger ones. Facebook, the flow has been solid there, to say the least. We actually saw, I botched the trade on Friday. We saw some action Friday morning. I made a play on Facebook and wanted to sit in it for a grind. Because, you know, on Friday expiration, one, it adds to the choppiness of the session. And two, they were playing kind of like in the money weeklies expiring yesterday. So basically that was telling us they were playing just for a grind throughout the day higher. And that was in the early morning. But it was so choppy, I didn't even get stopped out of it. I just took myself out of it, ran out of patience, and it had a nice move where I could have made a little bit of money on it. Right here, you can see. So you can see I had a nice run up, and then this choppiness really got to me. And I missed this little lift here, which I could have got a decent trade out of. But the Facebook flow has been huge. They're still buying a lot of rolling out. Obviously, there's some big profits there, but the flow's been incredible. Netflix, same thing. You know, there's sweeper activity all over Netflix. If you guys remember, Netflix was one of the, in my opinion, the better plays off the recent pullback. We saw those December 130 call sweeper. That's the shit I like. You know what I mean? I don't like the 10 points out of the money stuff. Because that's spec action. You know what I mean? That's spec action. And not to say it can't work out. It works out more than it doesn't. But when you see somebody coming into sweeping into weakness December 130s, deep in the money, laying that type of wood, usually that's a very good sign for the name. And they did it into this pullback, had a nice little tradable lift here, and then came back and actually went lower. And I don't know if you guys remember, they were same thing, December's out of all things. They really came after. There was some other flow around it, but the December strikes were the sharpest activity. So then you got this tradable move into numbers. Like I said, you could have took off a good chunk of risk. And, you know, now you're sitting with some free money up here. But flow's still bullish there. Let's go into some of the ones that have pulled back, and then we can flip around. Amazon. What is this? Somebody's been playing on my computer here. Let me get this off. I don't, what are these? Fibonacci's? There we go. All right. So same thing with Amazon. Some buying pre-number, right? The run up. Then you got to pull back. And the most recent flow we've seen in Amazon, November's. Somebody came in, I think it was around $2.5 million bet, and played some November's. Let me pull it up for you guys because I know you're interested in these names. Where's private Twitter? I can get it quick. Let's see. We'll take a look at that CLVS later. That was a nice trade. A couple in the afternoon actually made my day Friday. I was having a little bit of a frustrating day prior to that. Amazon. What's this? Oh, no, I got to go to latest. They put them random. Here it is. So that was the total tally, 770 November, 1040 calls. Here's the opening bet, 515. He paid 44 bucks. That was at early morning, a little before 11 on Friday. So, yeah, right out of this little pull here. Actually had a nice move out of that too. All right, and we also saw that in Google. Probably the same guy. I wouldn't be shocked. Probably the same institution, same guy, same whatever. Both were November's. This was on Thursday? Yeah, this wasn't Friday. This was on Thursday. Let me double check. I think it was Goog without the L. That usually catches the better action, believe it or not. Oh, no, maybe it was Google. It might have been Google. Hold on. Yeah, it was Google. My bad. November 990s, 3750. Very similar, right, to the Amazon? So most likely same syndicate there. And this was on July 25th in the morning. July 25th is what? Is that Thursday? Wait, Wednesday? Stock was 967 at the time. So he was a little underwater. I think it went down the next day. 960. Oh, so it was up here, I think, right? Yeah. So he's underwater already on the Google. On the Google, I got the wrong stock up. You see how dizzy I am? And I'll make all you guys dizzy. That's why it didn't look right. These think of swim charts. 967. Yeah. So it was up around here on this day. So he's still a little bit underwater, but he's got Novembers, you know? That's what he's looking to do. And they came in and bought the Amazons. All right, so those are two names that are weak, that have some post earnings buying, Novembers, so they got some time behind them. Baidu has been ridiculous. The flow really started to heat up pre-earnings. Had a nice move, too. Tradable move. You could have left a runner into the number. I know you're going to complain anyway because you would have liked to have the whole position. But some decent sweeper activity for Baidu. Baidu doesn't catch a lot of activity. And also caught some action Friday into the strength, but it could be rolling up. We'll see what open interest looks like. All right, and let's quickly I'll go through some of the notable activity from Friday, and then I'll take some of your names because I know you guys like to do that. All right, here's some of the notable action. Again, keep in mind a lot of these things may still have earnings, so you got to take that into account. This ABA, the flow there has been ridiculous. This is not initial activity. This is just another big bet in the name. Jan 65 calls. Quite a few guys and gals in the room, in the steam room, who are members, made a really smart play off the ABA action rather than playing the BABA. They actually played both, I think, but made a nice play on this ABA and have done well. And you could see here, a lot of people just say this is a BABA tracking name at this point, but has had a nice lift and big action in this name. So some more Jan calls there, Jan 65s, 900 grand. RLGY, this was a nice little day trade for me. They have earnings, otherwise this would be some decent flow on Friday. September 35 calls. There was a sweeper initially, then a block after it. They gave it a nice little lift. And you'll see here. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this name. This was actually a red to green play, which was nice on Friday. It was red. So this is what it looks like on the daily. Yeah, nice trend higher, little pullback. And you got this nice little reversal here. They swept it into red, pushed it to green. I'll show you what it looks like. And you can see where the action came in, pretty obvious. Oop. So here's where the action heated up. Then you got this nice little pop, little breather, and then just a grind higher. So RLGY, some notable activity there. That GII, which I spoke about, all right. There's that sweep, another 1,000, September 22 and a halves. And what I like about them too, you heard me talk about the spec flow, how I'm not a big fan of it. You see how they went in the money here. Like I said, if this was post earnings, this would be probably my favorite play out of flow, without a doubt. But again, you got to navigate earnings. You got some time. I forgot the date, but you got some time. YPF, an energy name. You can see here. These are just 4 sweeps. There were a bunch of them on Friday. There were a couple energy names, especially in the morning, they came after. Let me pull up a 5-minute. So you can see action, pretty noticeable spots they came in. You see the volume pick up a bit here. That's where they first started attacking in the morning. You see the volume spike. And, you know, a little drift higher, and then they hit it again. You can see the volume spike there. They hit it several times. Then they started hitting it again here. And you got another lift into the bell. They hit it here. You can see a volume spike here. So they kept coming back for this name. I'll give you a look on the daily too. This is an energy name out of Argentina. This actually caught flow back earlier in the year, like right around here, and did well. Really well. You know, had a nice lift out of this consolidation, then topped out, pulled back, and now some buying coming into these lows. YPF. So August 4th, 20 and a halves they were sweeping. And you see how they were paying up 40 cents, 50 cents. They paid up to 55 cents. All right, that's the first list. Who do we got here? Oh, CLVS. A lot of big fans of this stock in the room. Biotech. These are just two of the sweeps. There were actually quite a few. Oh, no, these are three sweeps. 1, 2, 3. There were a couple more. So here, let's try to get them in order here. This was earlier in the day. This was smaller, 275 August 105s. That was at 95.43. Then they came back, and there was a little flurry of sweeper activity. That's where a lot of us got in for the day trade. When they come in a wave like that, usually creates some powerful momentum. This is what it looks like on a daily. Coming out of a nice little pull here. And here's the 1 minute so you could get a really good idea. So you can see strong in the morning, long consolidation throughout most of the afternoon, and then this is where things got hot. So here's where the sweeper activity started to really heat up. And you had, all kidding aside, you had decent time to get in this thing because first there was one small sweeper, you got put our eyes on it, and you saw the momentum just start to build up, and then there was just a flurry of sweepers to come in and really created some strong momentum. Then a little profit taking here, and then strong one more move into the bell. But right here, I think I saw pretty early, and I think we locked in, I think 96 cents on the stock, and I left some money on the table. I sold it quick. So this CLVS, you can see the lines there. And what else? This name was my best performer out of the morning. I took a couple of scratch trades, you know, small losers, small gains in the morning. Nothing really, you know, there was nothing really moving. This FE was one of my better ones. And actually probably was the best order throughout the morning. Here's what this FE looked like. Looked a little different than some of the others, so you get a nice different look here. Action came in, big flash spike here. You can see the high, 32.35, but settled over here. And then, you know, there was a little breather here. So that's how we look to play these type of names. You never want, well, this closed well off the highs of that spike on that minute, but you never want to chase this bar, ever. You want to let it digest a bit. Okay, and then you could also keep an eye and see if there's more activity to come in, and there was some smaller activity to still come in. All right, so you were able to buy this little consolidation, and then you just had a nice grind higher where you can raise your stop and try to milk it. This was late in the day charter. They've absolutely, let me tell you something. When you see these sweepers hit charter, it's initial activity. This is not initial activity. There's no reason to even think. If you can make a play on the name, you make a play on the name. They absolutely destroy this name. Destroy it. There was another sweep, December's, on Friday. There were, I think it was 2 or 3 monster orders prior to that, and they are getting paid and then some. So this is what charter looks like on a daily. They hit it back earlier in the year. It took literally, I think, 1 day. The stock gapped up the next day. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was, what's these dates? June. Yeah, so I think they bought this consolidation here. They bought exactly, because I remember saying they nailed the lows and then they gapped. So I think they bought right here. And then you had this day, a couple people in the room played it and flipped it that day. You know, you had a little consolidation and then a grind. And then, you know, obviously there's some news or something, but an explosion here. So that's repeat buying there, December 405s. You can see, and this is not even remotely close to some of the size we've been seeing in the millions. But this is a nice looking bet. You know, again, lay big wood. I like that. I like that. As opposed to these. See, like this, I'm not a big fan of. Day trading, fine. I'm talking about swing trading. These 35 cents, 20 cents, you know, quick trade type things, yeah. But I'm talking about when you're looking to get paid on a position, I'm not a big fan of those. Not, again, not to say they can't work out. A lot of them do, but they pale in comparison to some of the sharper stuff. And then this Yandex, this is interesting because here's another name that has just exploded, and they're continuing to buy at higher levels. Okay, so what happened is Yandex, they were buying this consolidation here. Okay, big move. Then they started buying off this pullback. All right, and then it caught a deal with Uber, however you pronounce it, in Russia. This is the Russian internet or something, right? So you had a monster gap up. So, you know, I was thinking that's what they were playing. You know, we said, holy shit, all that flow, they caught that Uber news. That's what they were playing. Make a long story short, they're still buying this thing. They were buying this thing pre-earnings in this consolidation, all Novembers, and then they added to Novembers off the pullback Friday. That pullback was on earnings. So that basically, that what it's telling me is that it wasn't an earnings play, and it could have been the Uber news, but they're thinking there's still some big possibilities later in the year off this thing. But all Novembers, that's all they've been targeting recently. There was even a size call spread, but I think that replaced stock. That was November as well. And all big orders. Big orders. All right, so that Yandex caught some repeat activity as well Friday. All right, so that's some of the action, notable activity off Friday. And you guys who aren't members, you could see, or some of you who are new, you know, that's the stuff, and there was some other stuff, but that's the stuff that caught our eye out of all the flow. Where is it? We saw, oh, yeah. We saw on Friday. Like, this is all the flow. Okay, and that's, again, that's all bullish orders. You know, there's some put buying too that was notable. I don't really pay attention to it, especially into earnings season. But that's all the stuff that really caught our eye that was clean throughout all this flow. All right. right, and I'm not gonna lie, it becomes more difficult during earnings season, but it is what it is. It's earnings season, and it's a good thing because it gets you trading less, and during earnings season, that's always a good thing. All right, let me start taking some questions. I know you got a lot of names, obviously, that I didn't mention, maybe some names from the past, so we'll get to some of those. All right, or if you have any questions about the flow, or if you're members, non-members, if you have any questions, shoot them all out there. All right, let's see. All right, I'll start from the top. NBIX, yeah, bio. George, they've been targeting August calls in this NBIX for quite a bit now. And I mentioned it on Twitter last week because, you know, it's one of those names you look at it, it does nothing, and then you look back and you say, oh yeah, remember they were hitting that name up aggressively, and you stop paying attention to it. What happened was you had this pullback, right, in this NBIX. You had a gap up, sideways, and then this pullback. They started buying August calls into this pullback. They were actually a bit early, I remember, because the stock went lower after their initial buying. So they must have started buying like right here, and then it kept going lower, and then did a whole lot of nothing. And they added to August, all August. And now you're starting, you know, like I said, you forget to look back, and you're starting to see a lift here as August approaches. So I don't know. It's a biotech. I don't know if they have anything coming in August as far as data. You probably know better than I do. But there has been all call buying, and it's all in August. So I will tell you that. And more than just an order, they came after it a couple times. All right. But as far as, you know, any data coming in August, that's something that I would advise you to take a look at, because they might be playing that, you know. But definitely some buying. What do you think happened to AMD? Scott saying so much call buying pre-earnings, then just pop and fade after numbers. Again, earnings, you know, I really don't have an opinion. Some names are going to pop off earnings. Some names are going to sell off. There's no rhyme or reason to it. All I can tell you is there was a decent move pre-number in AMD. AMD has had a ton of flow for the longest time now. So I don't think this little pullback off numbers, you know, it was up off earnings and then pulled back after that. So it's just people taking profit. Just people taking profit. That's all that I see. I don't see anything else there. And I will say this, the majority of the flow in AMD is all getting pushed out. It's all October, Jan, all getting pushed out through the summer into the fall and later this year. So the only thing you could take from that is they're looking and paying for more time because they feel they may need more time there. So yeah, that's the idea. But this is nothing, you know. This doesn't tell me anything. Like, if you didn't tell me there were earnings, right? This looks like every other little pullback in AMD throughout this grind higher. But as long as the market, and we'll get into that, as long as the market is okay, the majority of these things, especially that have seen strong amount of flow, the weakness is a trading opportunity. Again, I stress the word trade, because what I'm saying is, off these little pullbacks, if you see them get aggressive again and start buying this pullback, you could have a trade. I'm not talking about taking this and tucking it away for 2 months thinking it's going to go parabolic. The opportunity is a trade. So in other words, like this, you buy this pullback, you sell into this rip. You buy this pullback, you sell into the rip. And I wouldn't even wait for this much of a rip, to be quite honest. You're looking just to take advantage of the selling that comes into it, knowing that the flow is adding support. Sometimes, I know a lot of guys I trade with, they utilize the flow into weakness. If they get a snap back the next day or two and they make some money, they take it. Because, right now, again, this is not initial activity in AMD. They've been buying it all over the place. They started buying it down here. What else we got? Costco. I saw Costco's an interesting name because I mentioned it a couple times. Everybody was bullish on this Costco pullback. You rarely see this. Everybody looked at this gap lower as a buying opportunity. Everybody, all over CNBC. Costco's a great company, blah, blah, blah. So you kind of almost knew they were going to get run over. But interestingly enough, we saw into this gap down a huge June put buyer. Huge. June of next year, mind you. Okay? There has been a little nibbling, I would say, over maybe the last week or so. But nothing really that has caught my eye. But again, I can't even remember what they were nibbling at. I remember that June put buyer. So nothing notable in Costco, put it that way. Might be some flow there, but nothing notable. Starbucks, George, forget it. Listen, again, I don't know if you caught this. I mentioned it on Twitter because I knew a lot of people who follow some other people on Twitter and see them posting about Starbucks. I wanted to make it known I wanted no piece of that flow. Starbucks always, always, always catches earnings flow. Always. Never fails. Every quarter, as it approaches earnings, you will see some Starbucks call buy. Who knows? Maybe it's shorts protecting their short position into the quarter. Maybe it's stock replacement. Maybe some bulls mixed in, but it always. There's some names like that. Marvel is another one that comes to mind. MRVL. You see call buying pre-earnings, ignore it. It's always. So if you see Starbucks aggressive activity now post-earnings, in my opinion, may be worth a trade. But all that activity that was prior to earnings, meaningless. Meaningless. So again, we'll see how they approach it here in this Starbucks. There's been some decent trading. I'm not the biggest Starbucks fan, but there's been some trading opportunities in Starbucks post-earnings. But it doesn't nearly catch as much action without earnings around as it does when there is earnings. Always catches earnings action. So it's a wait and see on Starbucks. And again, right, if all that buying, if any of it was real pre-earnings, they'd be back here buying blood. They love doing that. They love to do that. So we'll see. Greg is asking, do I see any retail flow? Yeah, Greg. A lot of it, actually. Let me mention a couple of them. TLRD. We saw some really aggressive activity recently this past week in this name. Had a nice lift, too, grinding higher. This is the Men's Warehouse, I think, isn't it? The old Men's Warehouse. So we saw some action there. Some of the recent stuff that hasn't moved yet, this GII, 3 eyes, a little bit higher than initial activity, but they just bought some more on Friday. That's retail. What's that? Ulta. I mean, a legit size September sweeper and a January buyer got run over by that hit piece recently. But I just wanted to mention that. Oop, let me, this thing I came to, right here, let's see. So basically, the buying came here, right? Or here. I think it might have been one of these days. And then gapped down off that piece. So you're getting it at a discount. I haven't seen them come back for more yet here. But again, some legitimate September Jan buying, and they got time. You know, here's the thing. these names in particular, like in Ulta, if you remember, we were talking about a lot of the energy names in the same fashion. When you see this type of selling, okay, in specific names and sectors, there's two ways to approach it. One, you're getting in and you're looking for that quick flip, right? So you're buying, you should be looking to only buy weakness. So you see some heavy selling, you see some nice action come in, you get in, and you get a little snapback squeeze, you're looking to take that. So you're not looking for too much, okay? Anything more than that in these type of names that are catching this much selling and see flow, you have to make sure you take time. Use time to your advantage. And options are great to play these type names because here's the way I would approach it. Let's say Ulta, right? Let's say you want to make a play off the Jans. Even better. You have even more time. All right? I would look to buy Jans on weakness, on a day of weakness, and I would put into those calls what I'm willing to lose. I wouldn't try to use a stop loss on those calls. Okay? I would put in exactly what my stop loss would be as far as principal into the trade. So if the most I wanted to lose was hypothetically $2,500, like that would be my stop loss, I would just put in $2,500. Okay? And now you own Jan calls in UA. You're not stressing every minute of volatility and continued selling in the name. And who knows where this thing could be in Jan? Who knows? Like you could be underwater 8, 9, 10 points, and this thing could be $20 higher come Jan. You know, we see it time and time again. And especially if they see flow. Okay? And what you can do, a way to play it too is, let's say you buy some Jan calls, right? You put in $2,500, that's what you're willing to risk, blah, blah, blah. Now, you leave it alone, you give it some time. The stock is chopping around, forms a bottom, goes up, comes down, similar to like US Steel, if you remember that initial pattern when they were buying it. You could always add. You know what I mean? You could always add to it. You don't have to go crazy all in at one level. You know, maybe even better, you find a bottom here, and this way you can add as this thing gets closer to maybe the end of this downtrend, and you catch a decent sized squeeze for a good month of squeeze action, and you're going to score. So that's how I would play this and any other name that looks like this. That catches flow, of course. Alex is saying CVE. I'll get to your comment in the second, Alex, but CVE is another decent example, okay? And it's been awful. It's just been awful, okay? And the price of crude has a lot to do with it. So retail is a little bit different. At least you don't have to worry about the damn commodity and OPEC news and all that crap, all right? But you always have to worry about that with energy. You know, CVE a couple times looked like it was ready to squeeze, and then there was OPEC news and crude rolled over. But CVE, they were early. They hit a couple different lines, but they really loaded up on December calls. Okay? So you could, if you liked the name, you could have taken the same exact approach. You could have bought some CVE, stock went lower, you would have been underwater, finds a bottom, maybe they add to December calls, you could put in a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, without even realizing, all of a sudden these things start to curl. You know, now this CVE all of a sudden has a little bit of life. And, you know, knock on wood, oil doesn't shit the bed again. You got a little rally there. And again, who knows where this thing can squeeze to by that time. So that's how I would look at these things. Now, Alex is mentioning you have Septembers, right? I got CVS September, 7.5 calls, my rollout basically, no added cost of premium. Yeah, so that's, Alex, that's what I would do. The more time, the better, especially with these things, it's almost worth it. Like you're saying, it's hardly any added premium because nobody wants these things. Nobody's buying these calls, you know? So use it to your advantage. And again, I see too many times, not to sound like a broken record, but don't try to use a stop loss on these things. Don't try to do it, okay? Especially some of these less liquid names. You're stopped out as soon as you bought the thing because of the spread, right? I mean, some of these spreads, I see people trading Priceline and trying to use a stop loss. There's a $3 rip in those calls. So put in what you're willing to risk. You could always ante up as it starts to look better, and more importantly, if it even catches more flow, that would be a time. Jordan's asking Win. Win, I mean, is the same story every time. Win. They buy every dip and Win. Any legitimate dip, they've been buying and Win. Okay. I will say this. This time around, they're going further out in time. Okay, I don't know if there's any significance behind it. We're seeing a lot of that. Okay, that could be market getting a little toppy. Who knows? I don't know. But I wouldn't try to get too cute. Okay, again, like some of the other stuff, there's a couple ways, depending on what type of trader you are, to play these things. Okay, I know it gets frustrating when you sell and they go higher, but you got to make that. You got to have that game plan before you push buttons. And what I mean by that is, remember this sell-off? They bought the living daylights out of this dip. Okay, if it was just a quick trade you were looking to get out of it, you would have been taking profit into this. I understand it went higher, okay, but that shouldn't bother you if you were just playing for this. If you were playing for more than just this, you have to utilize time. You can't expect to go 2 weeks out, okay, and catch a bigger move than this. You may get lucky and it may happen, but you can't expect it. You can't plan for it. You can't position for it. So you're either looking to take advantage of the flow that comes in that's added support, and you're looking for that snapback to sell into, or you're going further out in time, so you don't have to worry about the volatility and all that shit. And I would have played it the same way here. It's tough to see on these candles. I don't know why these candles are like. Oh, I got LBR paint bars on there, I think. But here's what I'm saying with the Win. Like this already. Oh, you can't even tell here anyway. But if you remember the Win, they bought the weakness. And then Win had a significant snapback that could have been traded already, okay? But even if you didn't get out in time, you're playing either for a quick bounce or you're going out further in time to play for that bigger move. All right, but they're buying Win just the way they've been buying every dip for a long, long time now. Okay, so this is nothing new. There's been Win flow for a long, long time. As you guys know, we've been talking about this name for a while. Poe is saying AAP. Looks like they put in a nice bottom. Yeah, I mean, that's a little gone now, but they did. AAP, for those of you who don't remember, they came in. There was some nice looking sweeper activity off this gap lower. Had a nice bounce. Based, and then there's been some other sweeper action that's come in at higher levels on this AAP. Let me get this off now. I don't know if you guys can make that out handle. So starting to lift there. Let me see. A couple of the AAP orders didn't make it to the board, I don't think, but let me see. In other words, they were smaller, but some of them did. That's not it. That's too far back. Where are we? Oh, here we are. Yeah, so this was here, post earnings. You have the September 125 guys. There was a sweeper 2 there. That was at 102. Then on 720, decent sweeper for this name, 101. And then another sweep for almost 100, 107. So you could see coming in higher levels. So yeah, I wouldn't chase. You know what else looks like a decent name that caught a ton of action? This thing, KMX. some big time action, continues to grind little by little. Huge flow in this name. Jordan saying, what do I think about BABA going into earnings? Basically, Jordan, they are, like we mentioned, the webinar prior to that, since we started squeezing off that pullback in the Qs, okay, we got that Netflix earnings blowout. They were going to factor in a blowout similar to Netflix in all of these names, and we're seeing it. What it does off of earnings, I have no idea. But this is exactly what flow and what we were expecting going into the number. I think it still grinds. I think it's going to be choppier, but I still, barring the market doesn't fall apart, this thing probably still grinds into the number, because I'm putting myself back in shoes I used to wear, where if I was managing money, right, client money, I can't afford not to have some exposure to BABA. I'd rather have exposure to BABA and be wrong for clients than have little to no exposure. That's what's going on. After Netflix blew out, they had to own Facebook. You understand? They have to own Apple. They have to own all those names. So that's what's going on, and that's what we're seeing in flow. Troy is asking about Qualcomm. That's another interesting name. Qualcomm, the bulk of the activity is in leaps there. We've seen, yes, some other activity around it. I think we saw Jans late this week. So same way, if you're not going to play leaps, which you probably aren't interested in playing the leaps, I would look to buy this weakness. Okay, you would have been a bit early, but you don't mind that. Again, you put in what you're willing to lose, and you give yourself enough time. Just make sure you give yourself enough time. There has not been enough front month activity for this thing even to be trade worthy in a sense. I mean, the earliest I would go out for just a trade would be September, October at the absolute earliest. There's been some September action. Other than that, the more time the better in this name. And you're going to look for a decent move if you're going further out. You're not just looking for a trade, you're looking for a decent move. Back into the 60s. So if it happens earlier, then that's fine. I mean, that's even better, right? But just give yourself a legitimate shot by buying enough time. UA has had sweeper activity. They have earnings, though. Don't they have earnings? But yes, UA has had some activity into the weakness. It could be earnings related, though. Sometimes you see that in these beaten to hell names. Could be shorts that, they don't want to liquidate the position. What are they going to do? The cheapest way is to buy calls and hedge your short into the quarter. So that's what you got to be careful with this stuff. Sometimes you get a trade out of it if you get some aggressive activity, a little bump. But this name is not a big mover anyway. There's been some flow. What else we got? Jordan saying the Qs might pop when Apple reports. I guess depending on how the Apple numbers look. I mean, let me throw this out, because you guys know me as a perma bull, and I'm proud to admit I'm a perma bull. Okay, but we've had a nice rally. Okay, a pretty significant rally in a short amount of time, and we got a month left of the summer. We still got a lot of earnings left, and we're heading into a period of time where, I'll be dead honest with you, when I was a broker managing client money, and I couldn't be nimble as I am now for myself, my personal money, I would literally take the first half of August And my goal was to get as light as I possibly could be, especially if the market was off a rally. So, and the reason for that, September into October, October is usually known for bottoms, the mid to end of October, but this period of time is usually a complete disaster. At the least, a ton of volatility. So we're coming off a significant move in the markets, right? We're going into a period of time where usually at the least is extremely volatile, if not a nightmare. You name it, 87 crash, 9/11, Asian contagion back in 98, Russia disaster 97, you name it, it's all come around this time of the year. Okay, don't ask me why, but it all comes. Maybe everybody comes back from the summer and realizes all the risk that's out there, the quarter ending, it could be a million things. So I'm not in the forecasting game, but you got to look at that stuff when you're playing this game. You know what I mean? You gotta, again, it's all about risk reward, and that's all you're looking at. You know, when everyone's bearish and selling, okay, your risk reward becomes favorable because, again, everybody's getting out of stock. At some point, they're out. They need to get back in, and you know the probability of a squeeze goes higher. We're going now into a tough seasonal period with an extremely low VIX, off a market rip. Some of these FANG and Q names exploding, semis exploding. You know, now is not the time to get aggressive. Don't get me wrong, you still want to participate if there's setups out there, okay? Because if September goes by smoothly, and maybe November there's a correction, who knows? You want to participate and try to make some money if there's setups out there, okay? If you like what you see out there. But you really don't want to get too heavy now. You just don't want to do it. You wouldn't want to do it even if we were going into a different period of time where we were seasonally favorable. You know what I mean? Because of this move. You know, like I always say, it's that funnel is the way I look at it. When you get bearish extreme here off of selling and flow starts to light up, that's where you want to be most aggressive, like you picture a funnel, the top of a funnel, right? So widest at the top. I mean, widest if you turn it upside down. Widest at the bottom, and as you go, you know, longer in the tooth in the rally, you get your risk thinner, thinner, thinner. You become lighter until you get that wash again. You know, and like I said, we discussed this earlier in the webinar. It's so quick out there, guys. You know what I mean? It's so quick. You can say, oh, you know, I'm fully invested, but once I see or notice something, I'm getting the hell out of it. It's not like that. It's not that easy. Okay? You saw what happened here, right? What would you do there? If you were all in up here, what were you doing? You're going to stop out? So now what happens when we start to grind higher again? You're going to get back in? It's easier said than done. You know, you want, again, especially when sentiment and flow align, for my sake, because that's all I pay attention to, here is where you want to get most aggressive. And as this rally pushes on, you want to get lighter and lighter to the point where you're participating and making some money if there's more juice. But if you get caught, you're only giving back some of the profits you made along the way here. If you give them all back and then some, what good are these rallies? Yeah, the same thing happened here. You know, same thing. You got this rally, went on even longer than a lot of people thought, and then you had this wash, and again, everyone panicked, everyone stopped out thinking it was the big bomb that went off. Everyone got bearish, and that ended up being an opportunity. You know what I mean? And then you went higher again. And then this happened. And the same thing. This was a trading opportunity. And then just when they thought tech was dead, you get another breakout. So you just got to be careful here. That's all. You got to be careful. What else we got? And the thing is now too, maybe that's why I sound a little skittish. I always get that way during earnings season because I feel like I have no guidance. I can't really get a good read out of flow. I really can't because it's so damn sloppy right now. You know, there's put buying out there, but around earnings there's always put buying. So how do I know if it's the smart money starting to position that way, or it's just some earnings hedging? It's a really tough read. There has been some VXX buying. Coincidentally, they're targeting the fall. There was one, I think, September and one November sweeper, both sweepers. And that's the other thing. You're coming in this low. Now, granted, it could just be, I'm not saying a crash, it could just be something similar to this. And I think, listen, even if we are in the bullish of times, we are going to get these things a lot more often. You know what I mean? Even if this market is 1999 all over again, there are going to be these quick washes every time you see a move like this. As long as they get bearish and we see the put buying and everything that we look for on the sentiment side line up, and then we start to see some call buying come in, there'll always be that trade. Even if it's a downtrend, there'll always be that trade. You know what I mean? So that's what we got to look for. And, hopefully at some point we'll see another poll where we can make that judgment. What other names did I miss here? Does flow work for ETFs like GLD, TLT, USO? Yeah, George, it does, but you want it to be clean. You know what I mean? You want it to be clean. I'll give you an example. Another thing I mentioned on Twitter and we've been talking about, GLD just hasn't been that clean. So you see, like, for example, we saw some call sweeper action come in down near here, okay? And the reason why we're looking at that call sweeper activity is because sentiment on GLD was pretty washed out down here, okay? So if you see some call sweeper activity, you could look at it as a change in trend for a trade, okay? But as this rally has gone on, especially last week, and it's all been small, nothing. We see a call buyer, then we see a put buyer 5 minutes later, then a call buyer, and later in the afternoon, then a put buyer. So if it's not clean, you don't force it. If it's clean, it's the ETF flow is very valuable. I gave you guys the example last week about the pre-election lows, how the sentiment off ETF flow was extremely valuable. We were seeing nothing but VIX, VXX call buying in that correction pre-election. Then all of a sudden, it switched on the snap of a finger from VXX call buying to VXX put sweeper activity. And it wasn't just one order. It was a drastic change in the flow, which signaled to us that there was a possible squeeze coming. So that's the stuff we look at, not just one order per se, George, if that makes sense. Because they're ETFs. I'll give you another one. Again, gold is an active name. USO is an active name. TLT, we saw a recent put buying there recently off this high. And again, more than just one order. TLT is active. But sometimes you see stuff like this. And it's rare that we trade off of it, but this EWY, this is South Korea, by the way, okay? Coincidentally, there's a put buyer that came in off this rally into this high, all right? A significant put buyer. He opened the largest position of open interest in puts in this ETF. And then all of a sudden, now Kim Jong-un is firing missiles all over the place again after being quiet for a bit. We saw that take place, if you guys remember, excuse me, back off this pullback. There was some put buying up at the highs, And then there was some tack-on put buying afterwards that probably went underwater because there was a significant rally. But again, it gets your eyes on something initially that maybe you can trade. But that was pretty noteworthy in that EWY, that last put buyer, because it doesn't catch that type of size. It's not like TLT or GLD. Here it is. So this guy came on July 25th in the morning. 71.34 it was trading at. You could see 2.5 times usual volume. A $500,000 bet. Opened the largest position of open interest in September. 65 puts. Literally into the highs. The 25th. Oh, right here. Look at that. So like this stuff, we rarely trade on, George. I'm not going to lie to you. We rarely trade on this stuff. But sometimes people will trade TLT. In my opinion, it's more valuable for sentiment purposes and confirmation. So in other words, if you're looking at the gold miners, you think the gold miners are set up nice, right, for a trade to the upside, and all of a sudden you see some nugget aggressive call buying coming in. That would be confirmation to your thesis, what you're looking at. So it just adds to the confidence. Lucci does that well. Lucci does that as good as anybody I've seen. That's how he uses Wise Guy Flow just for that. Just for that. To confirm what he sees. He ignores, I kid you not, some of the best order flow. But you can't blame him because he's good at what he does. Like Lucci will be looking at IBB, right? All right. He loves IBB. He's just waiting, to pull the trigger. He'll fire off some small positions just to test the waters. Nothing significant. Then all of a sudden, their XBI sweepers come in aggressively. And that's his confirmation. Instead of keep an eye on it, now he's getting aggressive in size. So he'll start building a position, and then into the lift, he's taking profit. That's what Lucci does great. So that's where the ETF flow comes in handy. A good example of that were XBI, just to give you an example, had a nice run up, got a little too bullish, needed to breathe, and took a nice little breather into here, and then there was some aggressive August sweeper activity that came in. So that was kind of the signal, all right, start looking to take advantage of this move. You know what I mean? Positioning for this move. And, and then you got a nice quick lift out of that consolidation for a solid trade. So I hope that answers your question. It's not about, the moral of the story there, George, it's not about one order, in ETFs. You're always going to see one big order in ETFs. It's more of like a sentiment confirmation type thing you need for. Poe, what are you doing? You going away? All right, thanks for going out. And I look forward to seeing you. What are the names? Or is anybody on HB pullback? Young, I haven't, HD, Home Depot. I haven't seen anything crazy in HD. I haven't seen, again, right now, because it's earnings season, I'm really trying to focus, especially for members, on the most aggressive activity out there. Because there's going to be trading in all these things. So around earnings season, I'm looking for that aggressive buying, and that's basically it. Everything else is pretty hit or miss right now. What else? Let me go back. Ralph is saying Tesla. We haven't really seen anything big in Tesla. We saw some speculation. I guess it's earnings speculation in the Model S into the weekend, into this weekend. We saw some out of the money, cheap stuff being bought on the call side. But I was hoping to see, off this sell-off, another one of those sharp-looking sweepers that we saw here. In this little pull here, we saw into this consolidation a really, really good-looking deep in the money call sweeper. It just, gave a lot of people confidence for a high probability rip. I was hoping to see that into this, and we haven't. We haven't. So, Tesla is always tradable. You could day trade Flow and Tesla. It's extremely day tradable. But when, swing trades, you want to, again, all swing trades, you want to try to stick with the best action out there, because there's call buying all day long. You can't buy everything. So you're basically trying to focus on the most aggressive type action, or using it as confirmation. There are a couple of guys in the room, which a lot of you may know, who use the order flow as confirmation to what they look at on their end, and they do it so well. They do it so well. It would be easy for me to say, just wait to me signal out what flow is worthy enough, but so many traders in the room utilize flow as an indicator, and they do it so well. What else? So we're all good? Did I miss anybody? HD earnings 815. Yeah, so you got a lot of earnings here. XLF, the banks look okay. The only bank that I would even look at, maybe Bank of America, but this city. Now again, higher out of this base, consolidated, and had a little gap up there, which a lot of people members traded beautifully. Here's what went on in Citigroup. Those of you who follow me on Twitter know exactly. This has been their favorite bank, hands down, no questions asked. If you're looking to make a play on banks, there was no reason to look at anything else but Citi. Okay, the flow is not even comparable in any of the other banks. BAC a distant second. So, make a long story short, we saw some nice flow, nice move higher. Then we had this nice little breather here. Okay, flow dried up, and a lot of you remember me saying I was looking for that day of real buying to come in. Not just one small order, but they came after it a couple of times. They showed they really wanted to own this thing. And I'm sorry, this breather here. It literally, I kid you not, there are members to vouch, it came in the day before this gap. Literally the day before this gap is where they became aggressive. So a lot of guys caught that. Sometimes it works out that easy. We wish it was all that easy. Never happens. But you had that gap up here. So now you got a little bit of a breather here. The flow is still bullish. Flow is still extremely bullish in this city. Again, a lot of the action is further out in time. October, Jans. But if you had to pick a bank, Citi's their baby. Soon is saying, how do I choose which flow to pick for your day trade? That's a good question, Soon. Basically, those of us who are in the room, I'm on audio, video throughout the day. So basically this screen here, I'm sharing the chart I'm looking at, calling out the flow as it comes in. And, it depends. It depends. I will trade all the aggressive flow as long as it's not up $6 on the day and I got to chase. I hate chasing. That's the only thing. But anything that's aggressive, I'm going to look to trade. In other words, when they come in a couple times, I'll give you an example. This thing, CLVS. I'm not a big biotech guy. And I actually, don't like to trade biotechs because they're dangerous. But they came into this CLVS. There was a little flurry of sweeper activity that came in. So, being that I've been watching this flow for so long, and it doesn't take a long time to get adjusted to it, you can almost feel the momentum coming in. You can almost sense it. And a lot of members, it's almost like when they start sweeping a name you own, you get excited because it's going to create some sort of momentum when they sweep like that. So there were like 4 sweepers that came in a wave, And, I'm looking to take advantage of this momentum. Sometimes it's stronger than I think. Sometimes the momentum pops and then just does nothing and fades out. So I adjust my stop loss and risk accordingly. But that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking just to get in the middle of this and take advantage of that momentum as a day trader. I'm not looking, and I think a lot of people who day trade options fall into this trap. I'm not looking for a huge winner. My huge winners all come by accident. I get lucky. Meaning, a stock, I get in early when the action comes in and the stock just explodes. Sometimes, I got lucky. My most recent one, it's not that recent, but I think it was Monsanto. I got in off some aggressive sweeper activity, and then, I think it was 5 minutes later, the stock halted. There was some chatter, and the stock gapped up, and I had a huge winner. But a lot of times, the most of my trading, I'm looking to just get in the middle of this, take advantage of this, and a lot of the times I'm either taking small scratches, where a stock may pop and then fade. Maybe the market starts to sell off and weigh on it. So I always have a spot. Sometimes I'll even just throw it in there where I'm going to get stopped out no matter what. But once I come to the conclusion that the momentum is done in the name off that activity, I'm usually pulling the plug. Rogue is saying, I became a member just this week, mostly watched, but played a few names and did well, one not so well. These recaps are helpful to see what I did right, wrong. Do you ever talk about what you are trading personally in a room? Yeah. Rock, listen, the one thing I wanted to avoid, because this is new to me, this is the first time I've had a trading room or memberships. I was a broker managing client money, but the one thing I wanted to avoid when I did this, and I made it clear initially to myself, I wanted to avoid shouting out, buy this or sell that, okay? Because here's the problem. When you do that, like you're a new member, what I'm buying for myself, I could be getting stopped out of, for a loss of 10 cents in 10 minutes, okay? But a new member comes in and is buying the calls, okay, off my buy recommendation and stuck in it. Meanwhile, I'm not even in the thing anymore. And not only that, you don't realize, this is one thing I will tell you, when it comes to the flow. If you keep an open mind, okay, have an open mind about things and give it a legitimate chance, you're going to realize things that you thought didn't work that you've done in the past, things you've looked at, whether they're technicals, maybe just patterns you like to play, and you couldn't find consistency. Using the flow as an indicator will take that to a whole other level. I think that's what a lot of traders figure out, okay? It's not what I'm buying and selling, but they figure out, oh shit, when I add sweepers to this, that's when these things work out well. You know what I mean? So I try to avoid sharing. You will be able to tell what I'm buying, put it that way, okay? If you're on audio throughout the day, you know immediately what I'm playing because I'm screaming about it. I'm excited about it. You know what I mean? You hear it in my voice. I'll be like, I can't shut up about it. Like the CLVS, the action came in, you probably heard it. I said, wow, they're getting aggressive here. A flurry of sweeper activity came into this thing. Should create some nice short-term momentum. So basically, rather than saying buy, sell, I'm basically giving the color commentary on it, and then you could decipher whether you think it's worthy of a trade for your style. Okay? And a lot of times I'll be like, this is swing trade worthy. You understand? I'm not trading it, but if you're a swing trader, it may be, something you should keep an eye on. And there's a lot of that, a lot of stuff that, stocks don't really have much movement on an intraday basis, but for a swing trade, they're worthy of a shot. So that's a thing. And you mentioned you're a new member. I appreciate you signing up. That's the thing to keep an eye and ear out for, and you will get a grasp on that very quickly. As long as, again, you keep an open mind to things, you will get a grasp on it very quickly. Aside from that, if you're a private Twitter member and you don't have the luxury of, hearing the excitement in my voice and me sharing the color commentary and stuff like that, there's two things I can mention. One, the more sweeps in a name in a short amount of time, the stronger that action is. It's that simple. Okay? So if you see a Facebook sweeper, one, okay, then, right after that, a minute later, you see another one. Then you see another one. All of a sudden, Facebook, there's a high probability of momentum coming into Facebook. Okay, I'm talking about on a day trade time frame now. So that's what you would be focusing on. Like you see the CLVS I mentioned here, it wasn't one little sweep. That might have created momentum in itself. But it was the fact that there was 4 or 5 of them that came in after this thing. Why is that significant? Again, it's aggressive. That shows somebody really wants this thing. They're not negotiating a block. They're not sitting on the bid. They're sweeping multiple exchanges, multiple offers to get a fill because they want this thing now. And that's what you got to try to focus on if you're not in the room and you're on private Twitter or anything like that as a day trader. The more time a name gets hit in a short amount of time, the stronger the momentum will be. Swing trading is different. Like I said, swing trading is different because of the time frame. It's almost the same aspect. If a name catches repeat sweepers over the course of a couple days and the stock is still generally in a range, hasn't made a big move yet, that's strong activity. I point out this retail name GIII. Now, again, there's earnings, but let's just say, pretend there wasn't earnings. Okay, if there weren't earnings in this name, this would be really strong activity. Still is, but it could be a play on earnings. Okay, but this would be really strong activity. Why? Somebody came in, swept, and opened up the largest position of open interest in a name that never catches sweeper activity. Okay, then he comes back 2 days later and adds to that position, actually buys more than he did the first time. Then he comes back another day later and adds again to that position. Yeah, doesn't it make sense? One order can mean anything. One order can mean anything, right? Could be a hedge, could be this, could be that. Who knows? We never know what the true intent is. But what's it mean when a player aggressively keeps coming after a name? And I try to use the logic, put yourself in their shoes. Somebody comes over with some credibility and whispers in your ear, listen, this CLVS is getting ready to explode. You got to buy this thing Monday morning. How are you going to play it? How would you play it if you were a professional? Okay? How would you go about it? You're going to go in Monday morning as soon as that bell rings. You're going to sweep multiple exchanges and make sure you can get as much as you can in this name. You're not going to do some call spread or cockamamie bull combination to bring your costs down. You're not going to sit on the bid. You're going to aggressively try to get filled on this name. And that's why I try to focus on that flow. Now, we got to look and sift through some of the noise out there to do that, okay? But we try to eliminate as much noise as possible by only focusing on, aggressive flow. And that predominantly, that's why you hear the term sweepers out of my mouth every 2 seconds, because that's the most aggressive type of buying in the options market. So that's the bread and butter right there. If you remember And listen, the sneakier they are, the better. That's what I like. I don't like the big blocks, guys. You got the wrong guy here. I'm not a big block guy. You know, when somebody buys a block of calls, it's a $2 million bet. It doesn't excite me. I know it excites a lot of you. I know they do well more than they don't, but it doesn't excite me. Why? Because everybody's eyeballs see the same thing we see. I like the guy who comes in and starts sweeping 250, 300 lots under the radar, and he keeps coming. And before you know it, he's got a decent amount. Okay? Or the algo sweepers in that hog. Okay? Hog may go to 0 for all I know next week. I couldn't care less. All I know is Wednesday, some really sneaky sweeper activity, it could have even been algo related, came in to hog weeklies. Okay, weeklies that expired in a couple days. That's Harley Davidson, by the way. And, you know, I mentioned it in the room to everybody. People played it. I actually even tried day trading it that day. I made like 15 cents. It didn't do much, okay? But, you know, we spoke about it and we said, listen, that was some sneaky sweeper activity. If we see them coming in again tomorrow into weeklies, we got to be ready. Okay, because they're chasing something. There's something going on there. And if it's real, they're going to come again. So, make a long story short, they came again. Okay? And the stock had a little pop, faded. Then we saw a little more call activity. And then lo and behold, there's a chatter of a partnership with Tesla on electric motorcycles. And the stock explodes. So here, basically, this is what went on. There was small sweepers that came in, I think, into this little consolidation here, had a little bit of a pop, but you see, did nothing, right? Chopped around. Okay, didn't fall out of bed or anything, but just really didn't have too much of a reaction. Had a little pop and faded. So then the following day, sweeper activity snuck back in, had a pop, came down for like 2-3 minutes, you know, consolidated. Then a bunch of a new round of sweepers came in. Those were algo related and caught the news of a Tesla partnership. And this is what happened. You know, without the sweeper activity, there's no way I can take advantage of that. You know what I mean? A block, there's no way that guy would have bought a block and negotiated a block to take advantage of that. They sweep small lots aggressively. So, and again, as a day trader, you know, that's what I look for. Some do this and I make a nice hit. Some days they do this and I'm either taking a small profit or a small loss, but that doesn't bother me because I know that I'm going to run into these. And I'll be the first one to admit, I can't figure out what sweepers end up doing this. There's a lot of, you know, it's a lot of luck involved. I don't mind that. I don't mind admitting that. I mean, listen, Chuck, when there's a big block, okay, usually when there's a big block, it's tied to something. Very rarely does the sharp money buy an all one big block. But yeah, a lot of the blocks are negotiated. And here's the thing, Chuck, okay? And this is what I think initially, because when I first started getting into the flow years back, I started like a lot of people you may follow on Twitter do, unusual activity. You know, that was what got me interested. But I couldn't find any consistency trading off unusual activity. You know what I mean? Yeah, I made money when the market would go up. I lost money when the market went down. Some would work, some wouldn't, like anything else. It wasn't a total losing proposition, but it wasn't anything, there wasn't an edge there. But what I realized was that the small aggressive orders, literally $50,000 bets, 50, 40, $30,000 bets, would get a bigger reaction from market makers than a $2 million block. Think about that for a second. A guy swept 30 grand worth of calls in XYZ, and the market makers shit their pants and needed to hedge that off immediately because they were worried or about the risk of something bigger coming in or going on. And a block, a $2 million block, you get a little pop off it and then, they fade it out. And that's what caught my eye. And, that's when I just became pretty much a sweeper dude. I developed a sweeper fetish. The blocks just, they don't excite me. Like, there will be block buying that works out. Okay, especially if you use it in confirmation to what you see. So if, in other words, you like to set up an XYZ, you see a decent sized block buyer, opening buyer, that's okay. But, it's the sneaky, aggressive sweeper activity that's my bread and butter. That's like when you hear about the stories of the news coming out or an activist getting involved and stuff like that, usually starts off with sneaky sweepers. And I kid you not, it's in big names too, guys. It's not in unusual names all the time. Like, that's another misconception. A lot of members trade Facebook, Tesla, Apple, PayPal. I mean, it's not in all illiquid names that just because they're unusual. Sometimes it is, but I'm talking about in big names. I'll give you the perfect example, okay? Netflix. Now, there's nothing unusual about that Netflix buyer of the December 130 calls, right? It wasn't unusual size per se. But because of that order, that from the type of flow I've seen over my years, that type of order usually means something big or somebody sharp is getting into the name. We saw it, like I said, in Tesla. Okay, we see Tesla speculation on weeklies, out of the money calls all day long, and you can day trade off them. Like I said, if Tesla's at a decent setup intraday and you see some buying coming in weeklies, you might see a nice little lift. Okay, but Tesla, I remember one order in Tesla. That's all I remember out of all the Tesla flow, and it caught a lot of flow. I remember that one deep in the money sweeper that came into this consolidation here. That's what I remember. And you know what happened? It's not a coincidence. A couple days later, there was a pop. There was a stake. Somebody took a stake in the name. One of those funds or whatever. That's the type of buying they do. They lay wood. They go in the money, deep in the money. They get aggressive. So that's the stuff that gets excitement, that gets me excited. And like I said, there's a lot of names. Charter, even smaller names like this AL. I don't know if you guys remember that name. AL. I didn't even know who they are, what they were, and down here into this poll catches a Feb deep in the money sweeper. February. Okay, it was in June. February, deep in the money call sweeper. All right, stock you know, quietly just grinds higher, grinds higher, grinds higher. And then here there was, you know, significant news in the sector. So yeah, that's what I use it for. The sneakier, Chuck, the better. You know, the stuff that I can see that I know, um, you know, the regular guy out there can't see. That's the stuff I like. The stuff that everyone's got their eyeballs on, like Starbucks earnings flow, that doesn't excite me. You know, like a lot of you guys mentioned Micron, right? And the flow in Micron, right? The flow's been ridiculous in Micron. And you, how many webinars now you guys ask me about Micron? And I say to you, yeah, listen, off pullbacks, right? You catch a pullback, you see some flow, you got a buying opportunity if there's buying coming in, because it'll probably add support and you can get a snapback. But at this point, for me, there's no edge in Micron. The edge in Micron was what I call those David Tepper, because I think it was him, David Tepper deep in the money sweepers, the $22 sweepers, when they first started. Not now. Now everybody knows about the Micron flow. Everybody. Right? Who doesn't know about Micron call buying right now? Everybody does. So, you know, again, that's the stuff, that's the difference between, you know, flow, and why a lot of people think flow is useless, right? You hear it a lot. Oh, there's no edge in options activity. Yeah. When everyone's looking and knows about options activity because there's been so much of it, yeah, it probably isn't any edge there. But when that initial buying comes in and the average guy out there has no idea what the hell's going on or can't see it, that's where the edge is. JD. Everybody's talking about JD in the call buying now. Everybody. But back here, when they were aggressively sweeping, nobody was talking about it. So if that makes sense, you know, so you guys get an idea. Because a lot of times, you know, people think it's just unusual activity that we do, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Like I said, there's nothing unusual about a deep in the money December call sweeper in Netflix. So, all right, guys. Anybody have any other questions before we wrap it up? Again, I always appreciate you guys coming out on a Saturday. If you ever do have any questions, you know where to find me. You can hit me up on Twitter. Those of you who are members, you know, just hit me up in the room. X, yeah, I mean, X, there was some buying Friday. We'll see open interest if they were rolling any positions. But, again, the trade in X, it's one of those things they were buying. Remember down here initially, the August 25s? It got to 27.5. In my opinion, now it's done. Now what you want to see out of X, you want to see it base around, play dead, action to play dead, you know what I mean? No activity. And then after a little consolidation, if you see sweepers start to heat up again, then we can look at X. X was a tough enough trade with all that initial activity, you know? Had a lot of shakeouts, but it got there, man. It got there. David, yeah, I didn't even mention that. I'm glad you reminded me. Basically, this is what it is, all right? You got 50% off the first month we do during the Saturday Sweep Series, okay? So you got half off, and then it's $225 after that. All right, and you got the Wise Guy Revealed course, which goes into depth a little bit about the flow. If you're, you know, if you're really not familiar with it, I got a checklist that I use, you know, in my head that I relay over to you guys. Lucci's on there with a lot of psychology stuff. It's a comprehensive video course, as it says here. A lot of the details about what we do. Okay. So basically that's it. That's the only promotion we got now. For those of you who have been asking, at the bottom of the page you can find a private Twitter. We spun that off individually. Now, if you're a member to the Steam Room, you get this included for free. So you'll have access to private Twitter. But if you want to sort of like test the waters on the flow, get a feel for the action, if it's for you, that sort of thing, We rolled this out at a more affordable price. This is only $60, $59.99 a month. And you will have access to just private Twitter. Private Twitter, basically you get the, this search feature, but you get the flow, some open interest stuff over the weekend, sentiment stuff, but basically it's just the flow in real time, all the real action. Okay, but if you have a strategy already and you use the flow as confirmation, you can use private Twitter. Okay, if you're just looking to get a feel for a cheaper rate for the flow, private Twitter is the way to go. If you're looking to develop a strategy and you can afford it, I suggest the Room because of this. And you can ask members, the audio video has been huge, even for me. I hate typing. A lot of members say they can sense in my voice when they know something big is going on. Twice a week we do aftermarket recaps where I'll take any questions, Q&A on anything. We share strategies. We share things we're looking at. And there's a lot of cool traders in here, guys. A lot of guys with experience who know what they're doing, who trade a lot different than me, okay? They're different styles of trading, and that's the most important thing. What I do may not be suitable for you, depending on your account size, your risk parameters, your personality. But you can learn from other people in there and their style and take little tidbits, and maybe you can discover something that you feel comfortable with. So that's another perk, So in the Steam Room, again, you get all the alerts. You get this little heat map here, which tells you what's going on within a sector. You get access to the search. So any of the past activity, you could find out what price it came in at, what date, all that stuff. We got a filter tab. So just in case it gets a little noisy in there, this is basically all my commentary on the action and everything I post throughout the day. So you can keep that open so you don't miss any of the smaller sweeper activity and all that stuff. And you got access to all these other channels, the lounge and everything else. Also some real-time charting. I don't know if you guys really need that, but if you're not in front of a charting thing, you can hit up some charts here. That's something new we added. We're working on some of the sentiment stuff I look at. Retail put the call, things like that. We're working on getting that implemented in here. That's one of our main priorities because we look at that a lot for sentiment. So we'll have something like this heat map in here where basically you can see in real time a put the call so you can get a gauge on sentiment. Is Jesus a part of the mix? What mix are we talking about? You talking about me, Wall Street Jesus, or Jesus Christ? If you're looking for Jesus Christ, I doubt you'll find him in here. We got a lot of sinners and degenerates in here. I'm Wall Street Jesus. Who do you think was talking here? But yeah, we got a lot of sinners and degenerates in here, so you're not going to find Christ, but we'll see what we can do, all right? All right, guys, have a fantastic weekend. Good luck next week. Like I said, you always keep an eye on what you have at risk at this point till we get a pull. And, be careful because we're heading into seasonally what could be a rough time. So keep all your ducks in line this month of August. All right? Be good, everybody. Thanks for coming out.